Before you dive into this insane story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to read will make your jaw drop. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next twist-packed tales we bring your way every week. It all began on a humid summer night when Kira Johnson, a 27-year-old mother from Atlanta, was driving home from her late shift with her 1-year-old daughter, Amara, strapped safely in her car's seat, the streets quiet and empty except for the occasional buzz of street lamps flickering overhead, when suddenly flashing blue and red lights exploded in her rearview mirror, forcing her heart to lurch as she pulled to the side of the road, unaware that the next 10 minutes would spiral into the kind of nightmare that people only read about in headlines. And as the two patrol cars boxed her in, 4 officers stepped out with aggression written all over their faces, barking orders before she could even roll her window down, demanding she exit the vehicle though she pleaded that her baby was in the backseat. But instead of showing caution or humanity, they escalated, unhooking the leashes of 2 snarling canine dogs whose teeth snapped in the air as if already tasting blood, and Kira's cries of, "Please, I haven't done anything," fell on deaf ears as the officers yanked her door open, dragging her out and shoving her to the ground while the dogs lunged, the screams of her baby piercing the night, her arms burning with bites as she tried to shield herself and begging them to stop. But it was clear this wasn't about law enforcement, it was about intimidation, about power, and when they finally hauled her upright, bruised and bloodied, they laughed as though she was just another statistic, leaving her trembling and cuffed in the dirt beside her crying daughter, who was still trapped in the car. And in that exact moment, something inside Kira shifted. Fear was replaced by fire, pain replaced by purpose, because what they didn't know was that Kira was no ordinary woman. She was sharp, resourceful, and had connections they could never imagine. And while they wrote her off as just another victim, she began quietly plotting the ruin of every single man who had laid a hand on her. Beginning with remembering badge numbers, recording audio on the phone that had slipped into the dirt but still captured their mocking voices, and memorizing faces with a steel-cold clarity. And once she was dumped in holding for the night, bleeding and exhausted, instead of crumbling, she whispered to herself again and again, 10 minutes later, they'll regret this for the rest of their lives. And that whisper became a vow. So when she was released the next morning without charges, clearly a cover-up in progress, she didn't go home to lick her wounds. She went straight to her cousin Malik, a local investigative journalist who had long suspected corruption in the precinct but never had concrete proof. And as she laid out the bloody bandages, the recordings, the timeline, Malik's eyes lit with the fire of a story that could burn the department down. But Kira wanted more than exposure. She wanted destruction. She wanted accountability. She wanted those men to feel what it meant to lose everything. And so they set a plan in motion, leaking the recordings anonymously online where they went viral within hours, sparking outrage across social media, the hashtag Justice for Kira trending nationwide as people saw with their own ears the cruelty in those officers' voices. And while the department scrambled to spin the narrative, claiming she had resisted arrest, the videos and photos Malik captured of her torn clothes and the baby's terrified cries drowned out their lies, turning public sentiment into a tidal wave that no press release could stop. But Kira wasn't satisfied with sympathy alone. She dug deeper, calling in favors from an old college friend who now worked in cyber forensics, who helped trace hidden payments, revealing that the very officers who attacked her were part of an off-the-books ring profiting from illegal seizures and intimidation tactics, a secret web of corruption that stretched further than anyone realized. And with each revelation, the net tightened, until lawsuits piled up, investigations cracked open, and the same dogs they had unleashed on her became symbols of their savagery splashed across news outlets nationwide, their faces broadcast for the world to judge. And soon the officers found themselves suspended, then indicted, their homes raided, reputations shredded, wives leaving, pensions frozen, as Kira stood on the courthouse steps not as a victim but as the woman who had turned her pain into power, smiling faintly as she declared to the cameras that no mother, no child, should ever fear the people sworn to protect them. But even then, the story didn't end, because one of the officers, the ringleader with the cruelest grin, tried to intimidate her once more, following her in the dead of night, only to find himself lured into a trap, recorded and exposed again, his threats becoming the final nail in his coffin. And by the time the trial concluded, the jury needed less than an hour to deliver guilty verdicts across the board. The men who once laughed now shackled in orange jumpsuits, their lives in ruins, while Kira, though scarred, held her baby close knowing she had won not just for herself but for countless others. and the world looked at her not as a victim but as a force, proof that sometimes the hunted can become the hunter, and that 10 minutes of cruelty can unravel into a lifetime of consequences when the right woman decides to fight back. And though she never sought fame, her story became legend, taught in classrooms, discussed in documentaries, a chilling reminder that justice delayed is not always justice denied. And Kira Johnson, the woman who endured the dogs and the fists of cowards, had flipped the script so completely that their names were forgotten but hers would never be, because she had proven that sometimes revenge isn't about violence, it's about exposing truth so brutally that the guilty can never escape it. And in the end, her whispered vow came true. 10 minutes after they thought they had broken her, she had already begun writing the first lines of their ruin, a ruin that would echo for decades, leaving them shattered and erased while she and her daughter walked forward into a future no longer shadowed by fear but lit by the unshakable fire of survival, courage, and justice. And that, dear listener, is why you never underestimate the power of a mother, because when the world tries to bury her, she will rise like fire, and she will burn everything that tried to destroy her.